Question, I'm late on my mortgage. Does that make me automatically eligible for a loan modification? Should I wait and pay late on the mortgage on purpose?
Well, we never advise people to wait and pay late, and I think a point that you had made earlier is people need to demand that they be given attention even when they're current. The intention of the President's plan, the way it's drafted, makes it clear that the goal was to, services are getting paid money to work with people, and if they're not working, before they're in default, and if they're not working with them, then I feel like the public needs to complain to the regulators about the fact that they're not being worked with as a starting place.
And this is one of the next questions. What should the borrower do if the owner of the loan does not participate in making home affordable in that program?
I think that the borrower should still appeal to what I hope is some vague sense of community spirit that might be left in that particular entity, and explain exactly what their situation is. And frankly, that's all that our current rules, our insufficient rules, really leave for homeowners to do.
Julie, let's go back to tenants. If a rental property is in foreclosure, is the lender required to offer the tenants money to help them move?
Well, they're not necessarily required to offer them money to help them move, but if they intend to not or want to negotiate not having to provide the 90 days and have the tenants move out beforehand, certainly they do need to give them some money or consideration for that. There are other considerations with that, and that's primarily there's a deposit involved. You know, folks have to relocate in short amounts of time. So those agreements, you know, I caution people about utilizing them without having some type of legal advice, because there are intricacies. But the banks aren't necessarily required if there's a tenant in there. Do they have obligations that carry over towards that tenant? Absolutely. It has to remain habitable. If there's an ongoing lease, they have to respect that ongoing lease until its end. If it's a month-to-month, that's when we get into the 90-day notice. They can't be filing an eviction on that tenant prematurely. They have to wait for that notice period to expire.
We have a question for Anna. Will an owner have to pay taxes on the difference between the value of the home and the sale price of the house in foreclosure?
What ends up happening is that is the type of question that goes beyond the scope of a counselor, and when the client really needs to seek the professional advice of an
accountant, an attorney, someone who can really help with.
Exactly, because there is the possibility of consequences taking place, but each situation is different, and in order to get an answer that directly applies to their situation and their particular finances, they should seek the advice of their accountant.
Condo owners have some very special issues as well. Can a homeowners association foreclose if an owner is paying the mortgage promptly but behind on the condo dues?
The answer is yes. Yeah. We see these too. Yes, that's an obligation of the homeowner, and it can be foreclosed just on the basis of dues or assessments. Sometimes in condominium communities there are very large assessments for repairs or other kinds of defects, and those are just as enforceable in foreclosure as the underlying mortgage payment.
We just have a few moments left, and I'd like to ask you about the general trends that you're seeing. Are we coming out of this downturn, and are we seeing some hope coming up, especially with some of these new programs and community resources?
I do have a client that was given an offer for a modification where it was 2% on 40 years, and this is a client that is not behind, has never missed a payment, but has definitely had a major decrease in their income. And I was able to help them a little bit, you know, just kind of guide them through the process of doing it on their own, and they were successful in doing that.
And Kevin, from a policy point of view, are we going to see some relief or some changes perhaps?
Yeah, I would say those are almost the same. We need changes for relief. So the problems are going to get worse. We've had in large part because of the economy, the lenders were able to stave off more significant changes to the way they do business because they could say, well, the president has a new plan. Let's wait for the president's plan to unfold and see how we do. And the numbers came out and they didn't do well. And I think even the president, the administration recognizes that. We need to get back to more serious policy solutions like judicial modifications, reforming the CRA Modernization Act, and to change our regulatory system. Right now, the banks choose who is their regulator, which is completely, when people hear that, it makes no sense. Why should a bank, if you're being dinged by your regulator, be able to say, oh, I'll just go to someone else? So we need to change the regulatory system.
But what about this problem of fraud? Are we going to see tougher regulations, or at least helping people through these issues in a general level?
I think at the state level we will. There are two bills, SB 94 and AB 764. They're both designed to get at the problem that was described about the people who are taking advantage of those who are desperate for help. And the feeling is that one of them will pass, and that is to the good. And some local governments are also weighing in, Los Angeles and San Francisco, trying to pass their own laws to protect their local residents from this big problem.
Let me just mention two other possible avenues of help in rescue scams and fraud. One, the State Attorney General has a special project which is at least collecting evidence and preparing cases. And the State Bar of California has created a special unit just to go after attorneys who are engaged in foreclosure rescue scams. So those two agencies are moving forward.
So we're looking at the state level, and then we have already talked about the federal level. So there are various elements that are coming together. What about the community level? Very briefly, Mava.
At the community level, I think that people need to be aware that things are going to continue to get worse economically. We're going to see more foreclosures, which also first-time home buyers should be aware of before they go out there.
We'll have to end it there. But I want to thank all of our panelists for being with us, and thank the hardworking experts from our community partner organizations who've been staffing our phone bank. And most of all, we would want to thank our studio audience and those of you who are watching at home for sharing your questions about facing the mortgage crisis. We're committed to connecting you with the help you need, and we'll keep our phone lines open for another hour to answer more of your questions. We urge you to visit our website at kteh.org/mortgage for local resources, a blog where you can post your questions for our experts, informative videos, and links to our partner agencies. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Linda O'Brien.
Special thanks to our friends at Chipotle Grill at 975 The Alameda in San Jose, loyal supporters of KTEH.